Now, if you're wondering who won last night's GOP debate, according to the internet, Donald Trump was the clear winner. He apparently emerged the victor of the third GOP debate, according to several different flash polls taken by several different sites, and I'm going to detail about 3 of them. Now, as I've reported before, flash polls not exactly considered completely accurate or scientific. However, I think that they do play a role in, of course, reflecting popular sentiment when it comes to how people feel about a certain candidate. Now, if you remember the last Dem debate, Bernie Sanders had also crushed in these post-debate polls. So, very important. Of course, CNN, not too happy about it, actually pulling that poll, replacing it with a pre-debate poll showing Hillary Clinton ahead, and of course deleting pro-Bernie Sanders comments about that poll. So they do show something. If it's important enough to take down, they do show something. Now, when it comes to these surveys, they looked at Time, Drudge Report, and CNBC. Now, according to these 3 sources, Donald Trump handily crushed all competition. He earned 54% compared to 22% for Ted Cruz coming in second. And this is in the Drudge poll. Drudge ranks Rubio third overall with 11%, while Rand Paul takes fourth, and Ben Carson actually finished fifth, around 4%. So that's interesting. Remember, nationally, Ben Carson is about second in the polls among the more scientific counterparts. And in some places, Iowa especially, Ben Carson in some polls is actually pulled ahead of Donald Trump. So very interesting, the difference between some of these more scientific polls versus the flash polls. All right. Now, Time, however, has Trump also beating the rest of GOP field by about 26 points. Now, he receives 46% to Marco Rubio, who came in second with 20%. Time also places Rand Paul with 8% of voter support. Ted Cruz is fourth with 7%. Carson takes fifth as well with about 6%. Now, CNBC. Now, remember, Donald Trump was saying CNBC is not going to be a fair debate. On CNBC's own website, here comes Donald Trump crushing with 26% of the points. So, or I'm sorry, 26 over the second place competition. So he actually took about 46% of the poll compared to about 20% with Ted Cruz. Sorry for the little confusion there. Now, Rubio takes CNBC's third place with 15%. Carson ranks fourth with 4%. And John Kasich takes fifth with about 3.5%. Now, if you're wondering about the methodology, as I've mentioned, these polls aren't considered scientific, but as I said, they still are very valuable in gauging public opinion. Now, Drudge conducted its post-debate sampling with an online survey of 240,000 respondents. Time reported 11,775 votes in its own version of the poll, and CNBC, of course, didn't actually report any of the numbers. So we don't know how many people voted in that poll. There's a lot of things missing in that CNBC poll. All surveys were among the only the site's users, and they do have unclear margins of error, and that's, of course, why we call them unscientific. We don't know. Now, remember, as I had mentioned, Donald Trump was very, very concerned that this debate would be unfair and might actually cost him. However, it seems like, for now, and we'll have to wait, of course, until national polling comes out, but it seems like Donald Trump still retains the lead. He might even lead over Ben Carson or expand his lead over Ben Carson, especially after the performance of Dr. Ben Carson. Now, one of my favorite moments from Donald Trump, and I'm not a big fan of Trump, okay, and let's just put that out there, is when he went after super PACs. Oh, I loved it. And a lot of the media isn't actually talking about this. But I think this helps, because most Americans know that there's too much money in politics. There's too much corruption in Washington. Well, what leads to that corruption? Too much money. from big corporations and donors, and yes, even unions, giving to different politicians. So, when Donald Trump attacks super PACs, I love it. And I think a lot of the American people also do as well. He called them a disaster. An absolute disaster. The super PACs are a disaster. We need to get rid of them. Absolutely agree, and I think that's the best point that Donald Trump made. Now, Trump, and here's what's funny. The media, CNBC, actually did call him out and said, you say you're self-financing, but you're not, right? Well, it's true that he's not completely self-financing. However, I'm going to take Donald Trump's side. He doesn't take super PAC money, and a lot of it, and roughly half of his financing has actually come from individual donors. You know who else doesn't have a super PAC and gets a lot of money from individual donors? Bernie Sanders. So ironically, that's something that both of these outsider candidates have in common. They both dislike super PACs. They may be the only two in the race that I know of that do not have a super PAC, do not take super PAC money, and actually get a lot of their money from individual donations. So when it comes to that, I actually have to give Trump a lot of credit. It's also partly because he's super, super rich. But nonetheless, I can at least give him credit for speaking out against super PACs. So there you have it. Donald Trump crushing in the third debate, according to some of these polls. We'll still have to wait for more national polling to come out. But as far as Trump staying in the lead, I think he's going to continue. You can't stop the Trump train now. It's already going, and it's already gone.